What was the trigger?
I think it's something that ENCAT has covered a few times, but in the debate that's gone on for the last 10 years, I think that it was originally moving from theory to practice and developing skills. And we had whole sessions where we would debate about teaching students about audience development, about fundraising, etc. And that seemed new. That was the new thing. And I think we've been the last 5 years developing the skills teaching in different ways. But I think the world's changed around that. For some of the things that Claire Cooper was talking about, our environment's changing, our economies are collapsing, there's economic problems, there's environmental problems, etc. And so I think we need to train, or much better use the word educate, because I think education adds reflection. It's not just training, it's thinking about things. And I think the students that are coming into our universities are very moral people. They have an ethical outlook. They're concerned about the world. They may be doing an area of cultural management, but they don't live in a cultural management bubble. They live in the world. And so I think their concerns drive us, our own personal concerns drive us. And I think adding in areas of ethics, adding in sharing the teaching with students so they're engaged on courses, I think is a direction that's prompted by economic forms and societal forms, but it's also by the individuals, by the staff and the students. So I think that's where we're at, and that's where the discussion is now. I think they study exactly what they're studying now, because we are preparing them to work in the real world. It's not a change of, we're not going to teach audience development or fundraising or project management. I think it's just over and above that. We now want a greater commitment from students to the process of learning. We also want an ethical dimension, and we also want an entrepreneurial dimension, which, as I mentioned in speech, was not about starting up businesses, but was people who see opportunities, who wish to create value, and crucially, I think, create value for other people. In cultural management, that's creating value for artists and audiences. So they want to be catalysts of change. And I think that's a subtle shift from people who just do work. I think in Europe it's an interesting place to be in the UK, because we're sort of halfway to Europe and halfway to the USA. You pay for part of your education in the UK. It's much cheaper than education in the United States, where you're pretty much paying more fully for it. And I think in terms of culture, in terms of society, we are a bridge between that. American systems, Australian systems and UK systems. And I think it may be useful in a European context is that education in Europe may not continue to be free. It may not be able to afford to be such in that sense. And I think there's a very different position of culture in society in a French context, in a German context, and that's reflected in their funding systems quite clearly. England is again in that halfway situation, or rather the UK is. So I think our experiences working in the state sector and working in the commercial sector at the same time, I would suggest that may be the direction that economics is going to force other countries in Europe to go in. And so in a way, us talking about the UK model is what we do. And I would not want to talk on behalf of somebody from Germany on the German model. I think it's about, in universities, there is a really big debate, which is happening in the UK at the moment, which is the STEM subjects, which are the science, technology, medicine, engineering or engineering medicine, have proved their value to society and to the economy, and governments are happy to fund them, and to fund research and to fund that subject area. In the humanities, we have been very bad at proving why we're so valuable to society and economically. And until we get that right, until we prove it, governments are not going to fund in the future so much in terms of the humanities. It's a nice luxury if we're not very careful. And so I think what we're doing at the moment, certainly in the UK, is rehearsing the arguments, getting better at proving the value, particularly with cultural industries, which in the UK are about 8% of the GDP, finding ways of talking about that economists understand. Because ultimately our government is ruled by a treasury, it's ruled by the money people. No, I think it's both. It's both. I think what government money allows you to do is risk. And what is interesting to hear is some of the highly funded state organisations are, certainly in the European context worldwide, are risk averse. They just do more of what they always do. And the speakers have said some of them are in the 19th century. As far as I'm concerned, if you have state money, that entitles you to do risky things, to do the avant-garde, to do the different, because you don't have to be commercially successful. It's the commercial sector that often has to be very conservative because it has to make sure it won't lose its money. Interestingly enough, it's often, certainly in the UK, the commercial sector that can be doing the most exciting work. So it's not the province of the state sector to be exciting. It could be a lot more exciting than it is, but it has to take risks. But if you read newspapers, it makes a great story if an arts organisation is seen to do something crazy, which is wasting public money when you have a need for hospitals, roads, etc. It makes a good story. And so I think humanities and culture are very vulnerable in that sense. Whereas the science subjects are less vulnerable because they're seen to be doing humanity good, generally. Except for the old ecological disaster with oil and other stuff, but generally they seem to be doing good. And it's hard to prove that the humanities areas and arts and cultural areas are doing good. We sort of emotionally feel it, but we haven't got good at explaining it.